I'm with Deputy Paul Murphy. He only wants a couple of minutes at the end. I want to start by welcoming Bord na Móna workers into the Dáil this evening. Many of them have travelled quite a distance. And I want to thank the Business Committee for acceding to the People Before Profit request to have this debate. It's oddly titled, but as we can see from what's been discussed, it is about the Bord na Móna workers and just transition, which is supposed to lie at the heart of their future. Their future cannot be considered in isolation from the future of the environment and the future of climate justice. In the words of one climate justice campaigner, they have earned a living and served the people of Ireland by harvesting peat to heat our home and power our industries, and they cannot be allowed to have given their blood, sweat and tears and thrown on the scrap heap. In the ICTU's publication of 2019 called Building a Just Transition, the Case for Bord na Móna, they've identified very clearly the momentous significance of what is happening in Bord na Móna. The workers may be the first group of workers to face the challenge of just transition, or indeed the first group of workers that the government have to face the challenge for just transition with, but they won't be the last. Indeed, the very workers who turn on and off the lights in the ESB are just around the corner. So it's really important, as others have said, that this litmus test is faced up to. I was on the Climate Action Committee, and one of the priority recommendations that we managed to get through, priority recommendation number 4, in the energy chapter, has been completely ignored. And it states, in addition and in the interest of a just transition, any decision to close Money Point or to end peat production, the Government will guarantee to underwrite the current pay conditions and pension rights of workers affected where those workers continue to be employed by the state in renewable energy industries. I'm glad that we did actually prevail and stick with this recommendation, because it seeks to provide concrete solutions to Bord na Móna and ESB workers. But there's a selective invoking of the Climate Action Committee report. The priority recommendations of the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Climate Action were agreed after very lengthy meetings and considered deliberations, but most notably in the case of the Government's recommendation to increase carbon taxes, they've repeatedly invoked the Committee's recommendations but have totally overlooked and ignored others, including this most crucial priority recommendation number 4 in the chapter on energy. It is not acceptable that the Minister and the Government should be allowed to cherry-pick the more regressive recommendations and conveniently jettison the critically important ones to the workers of this country. I consulted very closely with the unions of Bord na Móna in advance of today's debate, and I want to take the opportunity to relay some of the most pressing concerns. First of all, the inadequate finance that's been allocated to just transition to secure jobs and work on bog rehabilitation. The amount and the manner of the budgetary allocation of 31 million is totally inadequate for a number of reasons. The 31 million will be raised by the increase in the carbon taxes and allocated to schemes to support a just transition to a low-carbon economy. But when you look at the breakdown, 20 million will be dedicated to the creation of new energy efficiency schemes. Most of those will be wraparounds and retrofitting of homes in the Midlands, contracted out to private companies. 5 million to be provided for peatland rehabilitation. Where will that money go to? More than likely, the Parks and Wildlife will contract it out to private companies. A paltry 6 million to be dedicated to a new Just Transition Fund. And I want to put that in stark contrast to what has happened in the Spanish coal industry. In Spain, mining unions have won a landmark deal for a just transition for coal mining. Now, we're looking in the Plan del Carbon in northern Spain at a workforce similar to that of Bord na Móna. And they put in place an investment plan of 250 million to provide a package of benefits with a sustainable development plan. All of the miners, about 60% of them aged over 48, all of the 60% who are aged over 48 and older, or with 25 years of service, can take early retirement. They're provided with a redundancy payment of €10,000, as well as 35 days per year of service. There's additional payments for miners with asbestosis, and there's money set aside to restore and environmentally regenerate the former sites, to upgrade facilities in the communities themselves, and to provide for the creation of an action plan for each community. Why can't we do that? Why can't we, when in November 2018, the then Minister, told this Dáil that Bord na Móna is currently assessing its eligibility in relation to an application to the European Union Globalisation Fund for assistance. As of October 2019, that application has still not been made. Minister, that is shameful, and unless you instruct Bord na Móna to fast-track that application, you are going to leave these workers on the scrap heap. I just want to talk a little bit about the position of the workers, and the last meeting they had with Bord na Móna was described to me as brutal, absolutely brutal. And in fact, Bord na Móna have consistently refused to honour outstanding issues, and some of them I'm going to outline here. The retirement age. There is discrimination against older workers. They are refusing to allow workers who are over 62 to retire. Why would they? Because they can get more years' work out of them without having to pay them any redundancy. Seasonal workers are being totally disregarded, and flexible new ways of working are questionable. There is nothing about joint training and upskilling of the workers. The ICTU have requested that a forum be set up at the WRC, the Workplace Relations Committee, and Bord na Móna have simply refused point blank to engage in that. There are no plans, no clarity on the plans for the ESB in places like Shannonbridge and Lanesborough, where Bord na Móna workers depend on ESB production. No plans outlined for the future. There's just some concrete support we could give. Training and upskilling is some of them. Proper redundancy payments, allowing all workers to enter into that voluntary redundancy scheme, and to deal with the treatment of seasonal workers. The forum for this is in the WRC at a Just Transition Forum, not at a commissioner with 6 million who's going to be set up and will relate to the local businesses. We need to relate to the workers, their union and their union's representatives. Otherwise, we're giving them the two fingers. And we need clarity on what Bord na Móna itself is doing, because a senior figure in Bord na Móna recently said at a union meeting that just transition is 95%, and I won't use unparliamentary language, but it's bull with something with a capital S after it. 95% bull S, he said to the unions. That's what he thinks of just transition. You're the minister in charge. We need straight away to undo this mess, to apply to the European Fund for more money for these workers, to talk to the unions in the WRC, that's what it's there for, and to set up schemes that will deal in a just way with the transition from peat production. If we don't do that, we're leading ourselves into major trouble, because when it comes to the workers who switch on and off the lights in this country, you may indeed face their wrath. I was going to finish with a quote from Naomi Klein, the famous campaigner. She said, if you inflict brutal neoliberal climate policies that result only in economic hardship, how do you expect these communities to believe you, to stay with you, to help us transition and to move to a new system of climate?
Just over a minute and a half, Deputy Murphy.